Dobrivece Pine School. I'm indeed very pleased and honored to be asked to make a presentation today at today's very important event. In recent times, business interactions between our two countries have increased. International Enterprise Singapore and police have jointly conducted a briefing to Singapore enterprises in Singapore just back in August. There was a delegation from police who went to Singapore. I hope the delegation members all left with a good impression of Singapore. Now, I realize that many in the Polish audience here today may not yet have a strong impression of Singapore. Therefore, let me start off by sharing with you some interesting facts and scenes of Singapore. If you're not exactly sure where Singapore is, we are right here, right in the heart of Southeast Asia. Singapore has a land area of about 710 square kilometers, making us one of the smallest countries in the world and the smallest in Asia. But this is the skyline of modern Singapore in the heart of our central business district. From our independence in 1965 till today, we have developed significantly into a modern global city in Asia. Today, we are a completely commercial and industrialized city-state. We have virtually zero agricultural sector, yet it is critical that in our urban planning and development, we continue to invest and maintain lush greenery and gardens in our city, so that we all have a comfortable place to live in. If you visit Singapore, you'll find trees and flowers in almost every corner of the island. You will discover that Singapore has a unique collage of cultures where people from different ethnicities work, live, and play together. Today, the major ethnic groups in the country include the Chinese, the Malays, the Indians. Amongst our resident population of more than 5 million, about 1.5 million are foreign expatriates from all over the world. Beyond coexisting with one another, there's also mutual respect, and this can be seen in the daily interactions and festive celebrations. As a reflection of our diverse cultural heritage, almost everyone in Singapore is bilingual, with English as a common business language. Given the melting pot of cultures in Singapore, our city is full of color and vibrancy. Working and living in Singapore is a cosmopolitan experience. Our people are highly educated, industrious, and well-traveled. Singaporeans have a high literacy rate of 96% amongst residents aged 15 and over. As a nation whose only resources is our people, we place a high emphasis in our education system and developing a highly educated workforce to support our knowledge-based economy. Indeed, one of the largest items in our national budget is the education system, with almost $10 billion annually. Today, Singaporeans can be found working in many multinational companies, as well as Singapore companies that have ventured abroad. However, we are not all work and no play. Singapore is proud to be the host of the first ever Formula One race, held at night in our central business district since 2008. Singapore also hosted the inaugural Summer Youth Olympic Games in August 2010. We also play host to APEC meetings in 2009. Over the last 50 years, Singapore economy has grown rapidly. GDP per capita has increased by 80 times. In our nation's early years, the economy focused on mass job creation in the 60s to moving up the value chain in the 90s with technologically advanced industries, followed by R&D intensive industries in the new millennium. Singapore might be a young nation with a short history, but it has managed to quickly join the ranks among some of the world's most developed countries. The country is also conducive for businesses, and local companies are trustworthy. There's strong governance and almost no corruption, and the nation is the top in Asia and second in the world for IP rights protection. We have achieved a sizable economy of almost 280 billion US dollar and relative prosperity as a nation with one of the highest standards of living in the world. Our GDP per capita is amongst the top 5 in the world. In 2012, we achieved almost 800 billion US dollar of trade. Our economy is diversified, powered by a mixture of manufacturing and services sectors. Many of these businesses are not just domestic, but international, with Singapore as a base. We are the 14th largest exporting economy in the world. Trade is 3 times of our GDP, one of the highest in the world. China, the EU, Malaysia, the US, and Southeast Asia are our top trading partners. To support these large volumes of industry and trade, a comprehensive banking and financial services sector is crucial. Therefore, Singapore has welcomed the world's top banks and financial institutions to be based here. Today, Singapore is the world's fourth leading international financial center, offering a broad range of financial services, which constitutes about 11% of our GDP. Besides financial infrastructure, transport infrastructure is also critical. In this respect, our Changi Airport is ranked amongst Asia's top airports. It serves 6,500 weekly flights connecting to 250 cities in 60 countries, serving over 50 million passengers annually. Singapore is also one of the world's busiest port and largest transshipment hub port. The Port of Singapore Authority, the PSA Singapore terminals, are connected by 200 shipping lines to 600 ports in more than 120 countries, with daily sailings to every major port of call in the world. We also invest significantly abroad. Our direct investment abroad has reached more than US 360 billion as at the end of 2011. And this is 1.3 times of our GDP, against one of the highest in the world. The external economy is extremely important for a small nation like Singapore. Singapore's small population means growth potential for companies domestically is limited. With globalization, being competitive means being able to source for resources, technologies, and markets globally. The presence of more than 20 Singapore companies in the delegation is testament of this interest. Besides Singapore companies investing abroad, many foreign companies also use Singapore as their business hub to expand into Asia, as the Prime Minister has mentioned in his speech. We have a strong free trade networks through the free trade agreements with major economies and countries, making us the ideal partner for Asia. We currently have a network of 20 active FTAs with 31 trading partners. I'll next like to touch on some areas of strengths of Singapore industry and companies and how we are venturing abroad. Singapore companies have over the years built up capabilities and technical know-how in various industries from serving our domestic market. The sectors range from environmental services to transport and logistics to urban planning to the manufacturing sector. The nation's success can be attributed to 3 broad principles. The public sector partners the private sector to deliver solutions. The country has a conducive environment and infrastructure for test-bedding new products and services. After honing the know-how and expertise, Singapore companies then export their solutions abroad. For example, in the environment and energy sector, Singapore, as you know, is a small country with insufficient water resources. We therefore had to develop our own water supply systems and technologies. We have insufficient land to handle the amount of waste from our residents and our industries. We therefore had to develop infrastructure to handle and compact this waste efficiently, and even convert them to energy. These alternative sources of energy help to power our economy as well. We have now exported these services overseas. For example, we have done the world's largest desalination plant in Algeria. In the transport and logistics sector, Singapore had always been a trade and business hub in our part of the world, and this is traditionally how we make our living, facilitating international trade and business flow from the east and the west. There's no particular reason why international container ships and international airlines need to transship or fly to Singapore, except for the fact that we have built one of the world's most efficient port and airports, and the accompanying trade infrastructure and services welcome them. Today, the companies that have participated in this sector have also internationalized worldwide. In the urban and industrial planning and development sector, again, this is something unique to Landscape Singapore, that we have to be very deliberate in planning and utilizing every inch of space that we have to build an environment that is conducive for us to attract businesses and industries to locate, which of course is a key economic strategy, But beyond that, it must be conducive for people to also live in and play in as well, else they will not be motivated employees for the industries. Today, our companies are exporting this expertise of creating townships and industrial parks overseas, and they have done many such successful projects overseas. In the manufacturing sector, in the offshore oil and gas sector, Singapore companies have a leading global market share in the production of rigs, FPSOs, and other offshore support vessels. But beyond the first tier of main production companies, like the Keppel and the Singapore Technology Marine companies, the industry has a significant supply chain that is also internationalizing. Finally, Singapore has traditionally a large electronics manufacturing sector, and many local Singapore manufacturing companies are part of the components and parts supply chain. The electronics manufacturing supply chain, as you know, is now very internationalized, and our Singapore manufacturers have followed their customers and gone overseas together. In addition, they have also diversified into the supply chain of other industries, including the automotive, the aerospace, the medical technology. Some of their customers are in Europe, and I'm sure Poland has the potential to be part of this Singapore-Europe supply chain too. And I'll encourage Singapore companies to also look at that. There are many more examples of these Singapore companies. Each of the members of the business delegation that came have a unique internationalization story and an interest to continue to build more overseas connection and businesses. Now, against this backdrop, bilateral trade has increased over the past 10 years at a CAGR at a growth rate of 6% a year. This is respectable, but the overall level of trade is still low. The good thing is, the basic frameworks for growth in our business relations are already present. Between Singapore and the EU, the recently initiated EU-Singapore Free Trade Agreement will hopefully catalyze a lot more trade and investment both ways. In terms of Singapore companies' footprint in Poland, we have a mix of manufacturing and services sector today. Given that Poland has a large and relatively faster growing domestic economy than Western Europe, we believe that there will be a lot more room for the increased presence of Singapore companies on the ground here. In terms of sectors besides manufacturing, I think environmental services, energy, renewable, e-government even in Poland, I think they all appear to possess significant market opportunities in the coming years. To conclude my short presentation today, just a short note here to highlight that the role of my organization, International Enterprise Singapore, is to drive Singapore's external economy of trade and internationalization. We have more than 35 offices overseas, including 4 in Europe. We now also have an iPad application that tells our story well. I would encourage you to take a look at it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's much room for greater business collaboration between our companies in both Poland and Singapore, and even in Asia. I strongly believe partnership is the name of the game in this globalized world today. Companies, especially the SMEs, have to find ways to work together to complement their strengths and limitations in growing their businesses. On that note, I wish you a fruitful networking dinner later. Thank you. Dziękuję bardzo.